He was a Liverpool supporter, so I went to meet him. I knew I wouldn't be walking alone, if you know what I mean. That was the trademark warmth and wit of Kevin Keegan, reflecting on the doctor treating his stage 4 cancer diagnosis. Even facing that kind of profound, scary vulnerability, he leaned right back on the spirit of the game that defined his entire life. It's a quote that really hits hard and sets the emotional stakes for us today. Because, look, when we talk about Kevin Keegan, we aren't just rattling off football statistics. We're exploring a deeply human story, one full of dizzying highs, crushing lows, and a legacy that fans have been fiercely debating for decades now.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. With his passing at the age of 75, we're taking a moment to step back and deeply reevaluate a legacy that, honestly, gets terribly misunderstood. Kevin Keegan, scapegoat, superstar, and savior. For a lot of people, his time managing England is remembered almost entirely through a lens of failure, overshadowed by tactical shortcomings and that infamous, highly emotional resignation. But as we're going to see by unpacking the source material today, viewing his career only through those low moments means missing the profound, genuinely redemptive impact he had on a whole generation of English football.
Section 1. The Player, Liverpool's Mighty Mouse. So when legendary manager Bill Shankly brought him to Anfield from Scunthorpe United back in 1971, Keegan was actually supposed to play in the midfield. But his nimble, courageous, just absolute non-stop style of play quickly pushed him up front. And wow, did it work. He became the absolute talisman of Shankly's second-grade team and drove this period of monumental success. I mean, look at this run. 1973 brought a First Division title and a UEFA Cup. In 1974, they secured the FA Cup, and Keegan scored a brilliant brace in a 3-0 rout of Newcastle. Then 1976 brought another UEFA Cup and league title under Bob Paisley, and finally, 1977 delivered the European Cup. In his big farewell flourish for Liverpool, he just ran Borussia Mönchengladbach's defense ragged, drawing the penalty that sealed the club's very first European Cup. Across his entire time wearing that famous red shirt, he scored exactly 100 goals. He was absolutely a superstar in every sense of the word.
And his dominance certainly didn't stop when he left England. He headed over to Germany to join Hamburg and ended up winning the Ballon d'Or, literally the award for the best player in the entire world, not just once, but twice. For his country, he racked up 21 goals in 63 England appearances and played at the 1982 World Cup. As a player, he was universally revered. Just a true giant of the era who scaled the absolute peak of world football.
Section 2. The Pop Star Player.
Let's shift gears and lighten the mood for a quick second, because you really can't talk about Kevin Keegan in the 1970s without bringing up his massive and frankly kind of surprising pop culture footprint. I've got to ask you all this. Did you know about his other career? Fame does funny things to people, and for athletes in the 70s and 80s, it often convinced them that they belonged in a recording studio.
Yep, the number 31. That is the actual peak position his song Head Over Heels in Love reached in the UK charts. And remarkably, while sporting this massive, iconic bubble perm, he managed to take that very same track all the way into the top 10 in West Germany. It was a collaboration with Smokey's Chris Norman, and sure, while it might be sitting in the bargain bins of Record Source today, it perfectly captures just how culturally everywhere Keegan was. He wasn't just a footballer, he was an absolute phenomenon.
Section 3. A Poisoned Chalice. But we have to contrast those joyful, carefree playing days with the brutally toxic environment he would eventually walk back into. Fast forward to February 1999. The English national team was in absolute crisis mode. The gains they made during that magical summer of Euro '96 completely evaporated. The squad was alienated, fearful, and basically at war with both the Football Association and the press. On one side, you've got former manager Glenn Hoddle's man management. Hoddle had famously shot himself in the foot by publishing a World Cup diary, which was ghostwritten by an FA official, by the way, that completely broke the confidences of his own players. The squad felt they literally couldn't trust their own manager. Then on the other side, you had the media's extreme cruelty. This was the era of early reality TV, a deeply cynical time in British culture where individuals were just held up to be mocked. And following the 1998 World Cup, a young David Beckham was the primary target. The press encouraged this terrifying environment where effigies of Beckham were literally being hung from lampposts, and his face was printed on dartboards. It was just a brutal time to be an England player.
Section 4. The Sacrificial Lamb.
So, the FA desperately needed a human shield. They needed someone universally beloved by the public to come in and heal a squad that was completely alienated and paralyzed by fear. So, they turned to Kevin Keegan, a guy the nation had huge affection for. He was brought in to do the impossible, make playing for England enjoyable again. And you know what? In this specific regard, he succeeded wildly. Just look at what Gary Neville said. As a man manager, Kevin was great. He was always great to deal with on a one-to-one. Keegan had an absolute mastery of lifting team morale. He replaced the cold, boring hotel atmosphere of the Hoddle era with genuine warmth, enthusiasm, and a real love for his players. For a squad that had grown deeply suspicious of the entire England hierarchy, Keegan was a total breath of fresh air. He fostered a fantastic spirit around the camp.
However, while he was an absolute maestro of human connection, the source material is completely transparent about his failings on the whiteboard. Robbie Fowler frankly stated, "He wasn't up to it tactically. We hardly ever planned for anything." Keegan basically relied on an old-school philosophy of throwing hand grenades and playing off the cuff. Now, that's a style that worked brilliantly for him as a player under Bill Shankly, but it was pretty disastrous in the highly nuanced arena of international management. At Euro 2000, players were literally begging him for a tactical plan to stop Portugal's brilliant midfielder Luis Figo. Keegan had no answer. And sure enough, Figo absolutely tore them apart on the pitch.
But see, to judge Keegan solely on tactics is to miss the most important thing he did for English football, and it happened during that very same tournament in Eindhoven. After England lost to Portugal, David Beckham was walking off the pitch and was viciously abused by a group of fans right behind the dugout. And they weren't just insulting his play, they were screaming horrible personal things about his wife and his infant son. In response, Beckham snapped and stuck his middle finger up at them. A photo was taken, and the press, who were just waiting to pounce on their favorite scapegoat, prepared to end his international career right then and there. The FA was absolutely terrified of the fallout. The media was demanding that Beckham be banned for life. But Kevin Keegan looked at his young player and simply said, "Don't worry, I'll back you." Keegan stood shoulder to shoulder with Beckham. He went straight to the press and publicly defended him, explaining exactly how vile the abuse had been. As Beckham later recalled, having the England manager risk his own reputation to stand behind him changed absolutely everything. It completely shifted the public's attitude toward the player, turning him from a villain back into a human being. Section 5. A lasting legacy.
Keegan's time as manager would end shortly after this. The intense pressure of the job, the lack of daily interaction with players, and the constant media battles really wore him down. After a dismal loss to Germany in a World Cup qualifier, a completely empty and exhausted Kevin Keegan actually resigned in the Wembley toilets. He walked away with the lowest win percentage of any England manager, and at the time it felt like an unmitigated disaster. But the objective proof of Keegan's lasting impact is the number 12. Following his departure, 12 of England's next 27 major tournament goals were either scored or directly assisted by David Beckham. The very man that Keegan saved in Eindhoven went on to become the team captain, the nation's golden boy, and the driving force of the squad for the next decade. Keegan's human empathy quite literally secured the future of England's most important player.
Now, to ensure we keep a balanced perspective here, it's vital to note that his management style didn't work for everybody. Michael Owen admitted, "It made me question my footballing ability for the first time. It was a dark phase." Keegan had attempted to force Owen to play out of position, dropping deep to hold up the ball in service of Alan Shearer. It was a tactical misstep that deeply confused the young striker, and it proves that empathy alone cannot substitute for a cohesive tactical system on the pitch.
And this brings us to a really provocative question I want to leave you with today. What makes a manager truly successful? Is it tactical genius, or is it human empathy? Kevin Keegan might have failed the tactical tests of international football, but he took over a broken, traumatized squad and shielded them with his own reputation. He was the sacrificial lamb that allowed the next generation to flourish. So as we remember his incredible life, perhaps it's time we recognize that sometimes fixing the human being is far more important than fixing the formation. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this changes how you view the legacy of a true footballing giant. See you next time.